Imagine waking up, unaware it's your last day alive. Does the thought of such unpredictability haunt you? This tragic reality strikes countless construction workers. While statistics are shared annually, do they indeed reveal the heartbreaking stories behind these fatalities? Join us as we explore the stories of construction workers who face this worst nightmare. On a cool October morning in 2018, the air was filled with construction sounds and machinery's steady hum at 2 Sebastian Court in Palm Coast, Seminole Woods. Richard Hockaday, 37, and Gerald Anderson, 39, employees of Nomad Pumping LLC, began their day like any other. They had been assigned to pour the foundation for a new house, a task that had become routine for the seasoned workers. The area was bustling with activity as other workers prepared for the day ahead. Richard and Gerald maneuvered their concrete pouring truck into position, the massive vehicle rumbling as it settled into place. The truck was familiar to them, its long boom arm poised like a mechanical limb, ready to extend and pour the concrete into the waiting forms. As they began their work, the process was methodical and precise. Operating the boom with a remote control, Richard guided the arm with practiced ease. His colleague and friend Gerald ensured the concrete flow was steady and even. They moved with a rhythm born of years spent working side by side, communicating through nods and gestures, their unspoken understanding more efficient than words. The concrete flowed smoothly, filling the wooden forms and creating the foundation for the house. The project was progressing well, and there was a sense of satisfaction in the air as the two men neared the completion of their task. Little did they know, a silent danger loomed overhead, hidden in the tangle of power lines that crisscrossed the sky above them. At approximately 9 a.m., as Richard manipulated the remote control, the truck's boom swung out, and with a horrifying certainty made contact with a power line. The line carried a lethal 13,000 volts, an invisible serpent ready to strike. The moment the boom touched the line, a surge of electricity raced down its length, through the truck, and into the ground where Richard and Gerald stood. There was no warning, no time to react. The power line released its deadly charge, and the two men were caught in its path. The electricity coursed through Richard's body, his muscles convulsing as the high voltage seized control. Gerald, standing nearby, was similarly affected, his body jolting violently as the current passed through him. The force of the shock was instantaneous, snuffing out their lives in a matter of seconds. Richard and Gerald lay motionless on the ground, their bodies still as the chaos of the moment continued to reverberate around them. Fellow workers rushed to their aid, but it was immediately apparent that nothing could be done. The men were gone, their lives extinguished in the blink of an eye by the silent killer that had struck from above. The aftermath was a scene of melancholy devastation. The once bustling construction site fell silent as the reality of the tragedy set in. Emergency services arrived, their flashing lights casting a red and blue glow over the grim tableau. Investigators began to piece together the events that had led to the fatal accident, examining the truck, the power lines, and the equipment that had caused such a catastrophic loss. The incident reportedly occurred as young children waited for their school bus nearby. Jessica Hancock, with her 6-year-old son by her side, was one of the parents present. She usually parked her car on the opposite side of the street, but she decided against it that day for some reason. This decision, though seemingly trivial at the time, would prove crucial. The children, startled by the sudden noise, froze in place, their eyes wide with fear. The power line landed mere feet from where they stood, its menacing dance creating a terrifying spectacle. In this chaos, the school bus arrived, and the parents quickly ushered the children onto the bus, ensuring they were safely inside before stepping back. The kids, though frightened, didn't fully discover what had happened. U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration officials and Florida Power and Light arrived swiftly and began their investigation. The tragedy underscored the critical importance of strict safety protocols and regular maintenance of equipment to prevent such accidents. For Richard Hockaday and Gerald Anderson, that October morning had begun like any other, filled with the promise of a day's hard work. But fate had intervened in the most tragic of ways, cutting their lives short in an instant. The two men, dedicated workers and friends, had met their end not through error or negligence, but through a cruel twist of chance that had placed them in the wrong place at the wrong time. Javier Calderon, a 49-year-old San Bernardino, California construction worker, left his modest home early on June 7, 2023, promising to return home early for dinner. He had always been a man of his word, especially regarding his family. The sun had barely risen when he kissed his wife and daughters goodbye, looking forward to the evening when he would roast marshmallows with his granddaughter, a ritual that marked the beginning of the weekend sleepovers at their house. When Javier arrived, his workplace was bustling. The site, located at the 10500 block of Glen Oaks Boulevard, was a beehive of activity. Workers moved briskly, machinery hummed, and the air was thick with the scent of fresh concrete and dust. Javier, a seasoned rebar installer with 3 decades of experience, found his place among the chaos. By mid-morning, the team was working on digging a long footing alongside a 6-foot-tall cinder-block wall. It was a task that required precision and caution, but everyone was confident, especially with Javier on site. The wall, however, held a dark history. It had collapsed twice before, once in 2017 and again in 2019. Despite its reconstruction, the wall stood as a silent testament to past failures and potential danger. Javier's hands moved deftly, securing the rebar with practiced ease. The rhythmic clang of metal and the hum of voices filled the air. Then, without warning, a loud crack shattered the monotony. The cinder block wall trembled, and it buckled in a catastrophic instant. Sections of the wall broke apart and collapsed. Amid the chaos, 2 workers managed to escape, but Javier was caught in the deadly embrace of falling debris. The scene was one of utter devastation. Dust choked the air, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Panic surged through the workers as they scrambled to understand what had happened and who was trapped. It wasn't until the dust settled that they realized Javier was missing. Fear gripped their hearts as they frantically called his name and searched for any sign of him. Los Angeles firefighters arrived swiftly, their faces set with grim determination. They knew time was critical. With sledgehammers and jackhammers in hand, they began the arduous task of chipping away at the rubble. Each strike was a desperate attempt to reach Javier, who lay silent beneath the weight of broken cinder blocks. For 45 agonizing minutes, they worked relentlessly, hoping against hope that they would find him alive. But when they finally uncovered Javier, the reality was heartbreaking. He was pronounced dead at the scene at 10:30 a.m. The news rippled through the site, a wave of grief and disbelief washing over everyone. The 2 men who had escaped were transported to a local hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, but the loss of Javier cast a shadow that no amount of reassurance could lift. The community around Glen Oaks Boulevard was shaken. Neighbors recalled the previous collapses of the wall and couldn't help but wonder why more hadn't been done to prevent this tragedy. Javier's family was devastated. He had been a devoted husband, father of 5, and an irreplaceable grandfather of 3. One of his daughters, Monica, in her grief, started a GoFundMe campaign to cover funeral expenses and other financial obligations. Her words echoed the pain and anger felt by many. This accident should not have happened. Monica's message on the GoFundMe page struck a chord. She claimed that the job site had violated safety regulations, leaving workers like her father at risk. She believed that Javier's quick actions had saved his co-workers' lives, a final act of heroism that underscored the kind of man he was. The California Division of Occupational Safety and Health also investigated the incident. They combed through the wreckage, examining the wall's construction and the site's safety protocols. However, as weeks turned into months, the investigation seemed to stall, leaving many questions unanswered. On August 14, 2023, the sky over Liverpool was a tapestry of muted grays, as if nature anticipated the sorrowful events. At the bustling construction site of Everton Football Club's new stadium, the atmosphere was one of determined industry, with workers and machines moving in a coordinated dance of progress. Among them was Michael Jones, a 26-year-old ventilation engineer from Kirkby, Merseyside. His colleagues and friends knew him by his middle name, Goodison, a nod to his beloved Everton FC. Michael was deeply passionate about his work and his team. Michael had always been meticulous, which served him well in his profession. That morning, he was tasked with operating a scissor ladder machine, a device he had become intimately familiar with over the years. His job involved installing complex ductwork for Merseyvent Limited, a company renowned for its precision and reliability. As he maneuvered the machine, he felt a sense of pride, knowing his efforts contributed to the heart of his cherished football club. The project site was a labyrinth of steel beams and scaffolding, with workers communicating through hand signals and the occasional shout. Wearing a reflective vest and a hard hat that had seen better days, Michael ascended on the scissor ladder to reach a high beam that required inspection and adjustment. However, the ordinary day morphed into a nightmare in the blink of an eye. As Michael adjusted his position on the ladder, the mechanism unexpectedly jerked. He lost his balance, and in an attempt to steady himself, he became wedged between the scissor ladder and a protruding beam. The impact was catastrophic, his head taking the brunt of the collision. The damaged hard hat offered little protection against the severe force. A colleague, witnessing the horror, reacted swiftly. Climbing up to Michael's position, he managed to dislodge him from the machine's grip and gently lower him to the ground. Blood stained the concrete, and the urgency of the situation was palpable. As another worker called for an ambulance, first aid was administered with shaky hands. Paramedics arrived and swiftly transported Michael to Aintree Hospital. The emergency room buzzed with activity, but the injuries were too severe despite the medical team's best efforts. Michael Jones was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The news rippled through the construction site, leaving a void that was immediately felt by everyone who had worked alongside him. In the following days, Merseyside Police and the Health and Safety Executive launched thorough investigations into the incident. The coroner's inquest revealed crucial details, revealing that Michael had not taken any substances before the accident. It was also disclosed that his hard hat was damaged, a revelation that sparked outrage and sorrow among his peers and family. Michael's family was devastated. His parents, siblings, and friends gathered to mourn the loss of a vibrant young man whose life had been cut tragically short. They remembered him as a devoted son and brother who was always eager to lend a hand and took immense pride in his work. Everton FC, too, expressed their condolences, acknowledging Michael's contributions to their new stadium and honoring his memory. The HSE's investigation aimed to uncover any health and safety violations that might have contributed to the accident. The scissor ladder machine was inspected, and its mechanisms were scrutinized for malfunctions. The construction site was temporarily halted as inspectors combed through every detail, from the condition of safety equipment to the protocols followed by the workers. The damaged hard hat became a focal point, raising questions about the site's adherence to safety regulations and the oversight of equipment maintenance. Tyler Whitten had always been captivated by the art of building. From an early age, he showed an innate ability to understand structures and mechanics, often tinkering with anything he could get his hands on. By age 17, his passion had grown into a clear career path. He wanted to be a builder. It was no surprise to his family when he secured a position as an apprentice with CS Development Group, one of Brisbane's most reputable construction firms. He was thrilled to be assigned to the luxury Helia Unit Complex project on Victoria Street in West End, a significant step in his budding career. The Helia project was a massive undertaking, promising to deliver a series of opulent residences that would redefine Brisbane's skyline. Tyler's first days on the site were filled with awe and diligence. He absorbed everything around him, eager to learn from the experienced builders and make his mark. However, amid the excitement and hustle of the construction site, there were underlying issues that went unnoticed by many, but were keenly felt by others. The Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining, and Energy Union flagged the site several times for safety violations. Despite these warnings, corners were cut, and vital safety measures were overlooked. For Tyler, this meant working in a more dangerous environment than he realized. Tyler focused on his tasks, and was unaware of the uncovered and unprotected hole nearby. He moved quickly, eager to complete his work and gain a nod of approval from his supervisor. But in a split second, his world turned upside down. Tyler fell, his body plunging through the open space and hitting the ground below with a sickening thud. The site fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the panicked shouts for help. His co-workers rushed to his side, their faces pale with horror as they saw the severity of his injuries. Blood pooled around his head, and his breaths were shallow. The paramedics arrived swiftly, stabilizing him as best as possible before rushing him to the nearest hospital. The following hours were a blur of medical jargon, frantic phone calls, and a waiting room filled with Tyler's family and friends, their faces etched with worry. The doctors did everything in their power, but the head injuries were too severe. Tyler was placed on life support, his condition critical. His family clung to hope, praying for a miracle that never came. On Wednesday, September 27, 2023, at 2 p.m., Tyler's family made the heart-wrenching decision to turn off his life support. The room was filled with an unbearable silence as the machines were slowly powered down, and Tyler's life slipped away. Tears flowed freely, and hearts broke in unison as they said their final goodbyes to a young man who had so much potential and so much life left to live. Amid their grief, Tyler's family decided to honor his legacy profoundly. They chose to donate his organs, a selfless act that would save the lives of half a dozen other people. It was a small comfort in their time of immense sorrow, knowing that a part of Tyler would live on through others. Tyler's grandfather, Jack Whitten, took to Facebook to share his pain and pay tribute to his grandson. He expressed the deep sorrow and numbness felt by everyone who knew Tyler. As an apprentice builder in his first year, Tyler's untimely death was a profound tragedy. He touched many hearts and will be missed but never forgotten. In the aftermath of Tyler's death, the Construction, Forestry, Maritime, Mining, and Energy Union and his family called for stricter adherence to workplace safety regulations. The union highlighted the breaches in safety measures that had led to the tragedy. No head protection, scaffolding, and an unprotected hole that should have been secured. Michael Ravbar, the CFMEU State Secretary, emphasized the need for accountability, pointing out that the site had been shut down on multiple occasions for safety concerns. Workplace Health and Safety Queensland, WHSQ, halted the site and launched an investigation into the incident. The findings were pending, but the hope was that Tyler's death would not be in vain. Jack Whitten expressed his desire for his grandson's legacy to be the lives he helped save and a renewed commitment to safety in the construction industry. The cold February air carried a biting chill across the Des Moines River on February 6, 2020. Like any other, Benjamin Rivera Avila, a seasoned construction worker from Altoona, Iowa, had woken up early that day. He had been with Kramer & Associates for over a decade and was known for his diligence and commitment to his craft. The morning sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon as he donned his work gear and prepared for another day on the Interstate 35 80th Bridge project. Benjamin's day began with a safety briefing, a routine he had grown accustomed to. The construction crew gathered around, shuffling their feet to keep. The scaffoldings loomed high, their skeletal structures swaying slightly in the breeze. Benjamin was tasked with lifting a concrete container to the top of one of the bridge piers. Benjamin secured the concrete container and began laboriously hoisting it upward. The rope strained under the weight, and he felt the familiar burn in his muscles as he worked. Just as the container neared the top, a sudden jolt shook the scaffolding. The world seemed to slow down as he felt the safety bar give way. The locks failed and the concrete container plummeted, dragging Benjamin. The fall was swift and brutal. Benjamin fell approximately 30 feet, landing with a sickening thud on the frozen ground below. His co-workers rushed to his side, their faces etched with horror. He lay unresponsive, a deep gash on his forehead where he had struck the ground. The paramedics arrived quickly, but despite their best efforts, Benjamin was pronounced dead upon arrival at the hospital. The news of Benjamin's death sent shockwaves through the community. He was more than just a worker. He was a father, a husband, and a friend. His family was devastated, grappling with the sudden loss of their beloved patriarch. The days that followed were a blur of grief and disbelief as they tried to face the tragedy. Investigations into the incident revealed a grim reality. The safety bar on the scaffolding had been installed backward, rendering it ineffective. Proper oversight and training could have avoided this mistake. The U.S. Occupational Health and Safety Administration launched an investigation, resulting in nearly $32,000 in penalties for Kramer & Associates. Benjamin's family, seeking justice for his untimely death, filed a lawsuit against Kramer & Associates. They alleged negligence in overseeing the scaffolding assembly and allowing an untrained worker to handle the task. According to the complaint, the company did not have a qualified scaffolding supervisor and ordered Benjamin to assemble the scaffolding without proper training. The lawsuit also named Brandsafway, the scaffolding manufacturer, and the vendor that sold it. The family claimed the safety bar was corroded and designed to be easier to assemble incorrectly than correctly. These claims were separately resolved in September 2022, but the fight for justice against Kramer & Associates continued. As the trial date approached in January 2024, a resolution was finally reached. The specifics of the settlement remained confidential, but it brought a sense of closure to Benjamin's family. They would never get him back, but they had fought tirelessly to ensure that no other family would endure the same heartbreak.